King Charles sat alone in his grand study, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting long golden shadows across the polished floor. The palace was unusually quiet. Servants moved silently, careful not to disturb the heavy air of tension that seemed to fill every corner. On the large mahogany desk before him lay a letter that had arrived that morning. The seal was cold and formal, stamped with the emblem of the royal guard. Charles's hands shook slightly as he broke the seal and read the contents. The letter was clear and strict. It demanded that the palace cut all ties with Camilla's family immediately. No visits, no letters, no celebrations together. The royal guard's orders were firm and final. Charles felt his chest tighten. Camilla's family had been more than guests or distant relatives. They had been companions, friends, and supporters throughout his life. Now, the rules of the palace forced him to turn away from people he cared for deeply. He looked around the study at the portraits that lined the walls. Each frame held the image of a king or queen from generations past, all of them wearing formal expressions in regal clothing. Their eyes seemed to watch him silently, reminding him of the responsibilities of his position. Even as his heart ached, he knew the weight of the crown demanded obedience. A king could not simply follow his heart if it went against tradition. Camilla entered the room quietly. Her soft steps barely made a sound on the polished floors. She moved to stand beside him, her calm presence offering comfort. Her face showed concern, but also a quiet strength. She had always known how to support Charles in times of trouble. "This is very hard, Charles," she said gently. "But we must think carefully. We cannot act rashly, even when it hurts us deeply." Charles nodded. Camilla's wisdom had guided him through many challenges before, and her words brought him a small measure of comfort. Yet the sorrow in his heart remained. Camilla's family had always been kind, loyal, and loving. To push them away because of rules felt cruel, but the royal guard's order left no room for discussion. Throughout the palace, whispers filled the halls. The servants exchanged worried glances, unsure of what the future held. Invitations that once promised joyous gatherings were quietly canceled. Meetings were postponed. The laughter that had once echoed through the corridors was replaced by silence, punctuated only by the occasional sound of a carriage departing or a door closing. Camilla's family felt the change immediately. They had always been welcomed in the palace, sharing meals and conversations with Charles and Camilla. Now there was distance, subtle at first but undeniable. No letters arrived, no visits were permitted, and their presence at celebrations was forbidden. They understood the rules, but the sadness was still heavy. One morning, Camilla's younger brother Henry arrived at the palace gates. He carried a small basket of fresh fruits and flowers, a simple gesture of kindness. When the guards saw him, they stepped forward firmly, their expressions serious. "Henry, you cannot enter," one guard said. "Orders from the royal guard state that your family cannot have contact with the palace." Henry's face fell. His shoulders slumped slightly, but he did not argue. Instead, he left the basket carefully at the gate and bowed. It was a gesture of respect, even in the face of sadness. Charles watched from the window, tears gathering in his eyes. He wanted to run to Henry, to welcome him as he always had, but the rules kept him from doing so. That night, Charles lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The grand room felt empty and cold. Camilla sat quietly beside him, holding his hand. No words were needed. Their hearts shared the same sorrow. The palace, for all its beauty, felt lonelier than ever before. The royal guard had always been strict, enforcing rules and traditions without hesitation. Their loyalty to the crown was unquestionable, but their order now had created a painful conflict. Charles felt torn between his duty as king and his love for the people who had always been close to his heart. In the days that followed, the palace attempted to maintain its usual routine. Meetings were held, ceremonies were performed, and official duties continued. Yet behind the formal smiles and graceful gestures, sadness lingered. Every glance reminded Charles and Camilla of the family they were forced to avoid. Every conversation carried an unspoken tension. Even the staff seemed to feel the weight of sorrow that filled the grand halls. Despite the sadness, there were small moments of hope. Camilla spent hours writing letters that could not be sent, her hand moving carefully across the paper. She wrote of past celebrations, of laughter and happy memories shared with her family. She read them aloud to Charles, who listened quietly, letting the words remind him of the love that still existed, even if it could not be expressed openly. Charles's advisors noticed the change in him. Once confident and decisive, he now appeared heavy with grief. They debated quietly among themselves, wondering if the royal guard had acted too harshly. Yet no one dared challenge the order directly. The tension between duty and heart grew with each passing day. One afternoon, Charles walked through the palace gardens. The flowers were in full bloom, and the sun painted everything in warm golden light. He paused near the fountain, a place where he and Camilla had often spent time with her family. The laughter of past gatherings echoed in his mind. He closed his eyes, letting himself feel the sorrow fully. Tears streamed down his cheeks, unrestrained and real. Camilla joined him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. They stood together, sharing the grief without speaking. In the quiet of the garden, away from the rules and the demands of the palace, their hearts spoke to each other. The love they shared and the love they held for her family remained unbroken. That evening, Charles made a quiet decision. Though the orders were clear, he would find ways to maintain a connection with Camilla's family, even if it had to be subtle and discreet. Love, he realized, was stronger than any rule. It could find paths where rules could not. Charles and Camilla began planning small gestures, ways to keep the family close without attracting attention. Simple notes left in hidden places, small gifts delivered secretly, quiet phone calls when no one was around. Each act was filled with care and love, a rebellion against the sadness that the royal guard's order had created. The king knew the path ahead would be challenging. The rules of tradition were strict, and any mistake could cause serious trouble. Yet he also knew that love could endure even under the harshest circumstances. The bond between them and Camilla's family was too strong to be broken by rules alone. As night fell, Charles and Camilla sat by the window, looking out at the palace gardens. The moon cast silver light over the fountains and flowers, a quiet reminder that even in darkness there was beauty. They held hands, drawing strength from each other, ready to face the difficult days ahead with courage, love, and hope. The days in the palace passed slowly. King Charles woke each morning with a heavy heart, the memory of the royal guard's order always lingering. Camilla was at his side, her calm presence a steadying force. Together they moved through the palace halls, attending ceremonies and meeting advisors, while quietly planning how to stay connected with her family without breaking the strict rules. Camilla suggested small ways to send messages and gifts. "We can leave things in places they will find them without anyone noticing," she said one morning. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "We must be careful, but we can still show them they are not forgotten." Charles nodded. He had always admired her cleverness. With her help, he began to find small ways to communicate with her family. A basket of fresh fruits left at the edge of the garden, a note hidden in a flower arrangement, or a small token placed where they would discover it. Each act was filled with thought and care, and though simple, it reminded Camilla's family that they were still loved and remembered. Henry, Camilla's younger brother, noticed the changes immediately. Though he could not visit the palace openly, he felt the presence of the king's kindness in subtle ways. A bouquet of flowers appeared at the family home. A basket of fresh bread and fruits arrived unexpectedly, and letters with no signature spoke of love and care. He knew these gestures were from Charles and Camilla, and each one lifted his spirits. The king and queen had to remain cautious. The royal guard watched the palace closely, ensuring that every order was followed to the letter. Any visible contact with Camilla's family could lead to serious consequences. Charles often felt trapped between his duties and his desire to maintain family connections, yet each small secret act gave him hope. One afternoon, Charles and Camilla walked through the palace gardens, planning their next gesture. They paused near a fountain where they had shared many happy moments with her family in the past. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the soft sound of flowing water filled the quiet air. "We must be careful," Charles said, "but we cannot let them feel abandoned. They have been a part of our lives for so long." Camilla nodded. "We will find ways. Even small things matter. A kind word, a thoughtful gift, a hidden note. They will know we remember them." The couple began to devise a system. Each week they would choose a small gift or message and leave it where Camilla's family could find it, without raising suspicion. Charles would personally deliver some items, dressed in plain clothes and moving quietly through the palace corridors. Camilla often helped, planning the route and timing to ensure no one saw them. Meanwhile, the royal guard remained vigilant. They noticed subtle changes in the palace routine and whispered among themselves. Some suspected the king might be bending the rules, but none could prove it. Charles and Camilla had to be clever, using patience and discretion to protect their secret. Henry's mother, Camilla's mother, began to notice the small gifts and notes. At first she wondered if it was a mistake or perhaps a message from someone else, but over time it became clear that these gestures came from Charles and Camilla. Her heart filled with gratitude. She knew the couple risked much to maintain a connection with their family. The gestures grew more creative. A carefully folded letter left under a garden bench, a hand-picked bouquet with a small ribbon, a basket of homemade pastries placed at the front gate. Each act carried a message of love and loyalty. Charles often smiled as he planned these surprises, knowing that even small acts could bring happiness and hope. One day, Camilla suggested a new idea. "What if we plan a small secret gathering in the gardens?" she asked. "A place where we can meet briefly, just enough to see each other and exchange stories. No one else will know." Charles's eyes lit up. "It will be risky, but it could be wonderful. We must plan carefully and ensure the royal guard does not discover it." Together they chose a quiet spot in the palace gardens, hidden behind tall hedges and blooming flowers. A bench was placed under the shade of a tree, and small lanterns were hung to provide light in the evening. The meeting would be brief, simple, and filled with warmth. It would be a moment of joy in the midst of sadness. On the chosen evening, Henry and his mother arrived quietly at the garden gate. Charles and Camilla waited, hidden behind the hedges. When they saw each other, smiles appeared on every face. For a few precious hours they shared stories, laughter, and memories of past celebrations. The rules of the palace faded for a short time, replaced by the love and connection that had always existed between them. The royal guard, of course, could not be completely ignored. Charles and Camilla knew that discovery could lead to consequences. They moved with care, always watching the time and the surroundings. But even in this cautious approach, the moments shared were filled with joy. Every word spoken, every smile exchanged, strengthened the bond between them and Camilla's family. After the gathering, the king and queen returned to their quarters, hearts lightened by the experience. "It was perfect," Charles said softly. "Even for a little while it felt like nothing had changed." "We must continue carefully, but we must continue." Camilla nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Love can find its way even when rules try to stop it. We must be patient, but we will keep them close." In the days that followed, the small acts of kindness and secret meetings became a routine. The family grew stronger through these quiet gestures. Each letter, each gift, and each brief meeting reminded them that they were not forgotten. Even when tradition demanded distance, the royal guard continued their work, unaware of the careful planning and secrecy. They believed their orders were being followed perfectly, while Charles and Camilla skillfully maintained the connection with her family. It was a delicate balance, but one that brought hope and happiness to all involved. One evening, Charles and Camilla sat in the palace study, planning the next week's secret gestures. The room was filled with maps, notes, and small items ready to be delivered. Each idea was discussed carefully, considering the safety and discretion required, yet their spirits were lifted by the thought that their family would once again feel loved and remembered. "Every small act matters," Camilla said. "We may not be able to hold them openly, but we can still make them feel cherished." Charles smiled. "You are right. Love is stronger than any rule, any order. We will find a way to stay close, no matter what." Even as the royal guard's rules remained strict, Charles and Camilla found hope in these secret gestures. They discovered that love could not be fully controlled by rules, and that care and thoughtfulness could overcome even the most difficult challenges. Each act of kindness, each shared smile reminded them of what truly mattered, and so life in the palace continued. Official duties and ceremonies went on, but behind the scenes, small acts of love and loyalty continued to bring happiness. Camilla's family felt the warmth of Charles and Camilla's hearts, and the king and queen found strength in knowing that even strict rules could not break the bonds of family. The days in the palace began to feel heavier, as the royal guard grew more vigilant. King Charles and Camilla had maintained their secret gestures for weeks, and the small acts of kindness had brought comfort and joy to Camilla's family. Yet the couple knew that their careful plan could not last forever. The more time passed, the higher the risk of being discovered. Charles often felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had always known that being king was not easy, But this challenge was different. It required careful planning, patience, and a constant awareness of the people around him. Camilla remained his steady support, encouraging him to continue finding ways to keep her family close without breaking the rules. One morning, the king walked through the palace corridors, observing the royal guard as they performed their duties. Their faces were stern, their eyes alert. Every movement was precise and measured, and they seemed more watchful than ever. Charles realized that any misstep could reveal the secret connections he had maintained with Camilla's family. Camilla joined him quietly, holding his hand for reassurance. "We have been careful so far," she said softly. "We must continue, but we must be even more cautious now." "The guard is paying close attention." Charles nodded. He trusted Camilla's judgment completely. Together, they reviewed their plan, making adjustments to ensure that each gesture remained discreet. Letters would be hidden in new places, gifts delivered at different times, and meetings in the gardens were spaced further apart to avoid detection. Despite the precautions, the royal guard had begun to notice small inconsistencies in the palace routine. Servants reported unusual movements, unexpected deliveries, and brief disappearances of the king and queen from their usual paths. A few officers quietly discussed their suspicions, though they had no concrete proof. Henry, Camilla's younger brother, sensed the tension. Even though he could not visit the palace openly, he noticed that the gifts and letters now arrived with more care and secrecy. He understood that the king and queen were taking risks to maintain contact with their family, and his heart was filled with gratitude. One evening, Charles and Camilla met in the garden with Henry and his mother. The hidden spot behind the hedges was familiar now, a place where laughter and conversation could exist freely despite the strict rules. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of their daily lives and recalling happy memories from the past. "This moment is precious," Charles said, glancing at the faces around him. "Even though we must be careful, it reminds us that love cannot be stopped." Camilla smiled. "Every small meeting, every hidden note keeps our family close. The rules cannot erase what is in our hearts." Henry's mother reached out and held Charles's hand. "Thank you for thinking of us even when it is difficult. Your care means more than words can say." The gathering was brief as always, but it strengthened the bond between them. Charles and Camilla returned to the palace quietly, hearts lifted by the connection they had maintained. Yet they could not ignore the growing tension within the palace walls. The royal guard had begun to pay closer attention. They observed patterns in the movements of the king and queen, noting the times when they left their chambers and returned. While they had no proof of contact with Camilla's family, their suspicions were growing. Charles and Camilla knew they had to be more cautious than ever. To avoid suspicion, Charles began attending more official duties, ensuring that the royal guard believed he was fully focused on the responsibilities of the crown. Camilla spent time in the royal library and gardens, keeping their activities private while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. Together, they found ways to balance their secret efforts with their public duties. One afternoon, Charles received a message from one of his trusted advisors. The note warned that the royal guard might increase surveillance in the coming days. The advisor did not know of the hidden meetings, only that unusual patterns were being noticed. Charles shared the news with Camilla, and together they devised a new plan to make their secret gestures safer. "We must be more careful," Charles said. "Every movement, every action must be measured." "We cannot let the guard discover us," Camilla nodded. "We will adapt. We have done well so far, and we can continue if we are cautious." The couple decided to make their gifts and letters even more subtle. Instead of large baskets or obvious notes, they chose smaller items that could be easily hidden. A single flower left at the edge of the garden, a handwritten note tucked inside a book, a small piece of bread or pastry placed at the family gate. These gestures were quiet but meaningful, carrying the message that they were loved and remembered. Henry and his mother appreciated the thoughtfulness of each gesture. They felt the king and queen's care, and it gave them strength during a time of separation. Even though the royal guard had ordered the palace to cut all ties, the family knew that love could find a way through careful planning and determination. The secret meetings in the garden continued, though they were now spaced further apart. Charles and Camilla timed their visits to avoid any chance of being seen. They spoke in low voices, shared laughter, and recounted memories that reminded them of the joy they had once enjoyed together. Each meeting was precious, a moment of warmth and connection in a world of strict rules. One evening, Charles looked at the stars from the garden, reflecting on the challenges he faced. The royal guard's orders were clear, yet his heart refused to follow them completely. He had to find a balance between duty and love, tradition and family. Camilla stood beside him, her hand in his, offering quiet strength and encouragement. "Love is stronger than rules," she whispered. "We will find a way, Charles. We always have." Charles nodded, feeling the truth of her words. Even in the face of strict rules and growing suspicion, their love and loyalty could not be broken. The bonds with Camilla's family were too strong to be erased. The royal guard, meanwhile, continued their watch. Officers moved through the palace corridors, observing and reporting any unusual activity. They remained unaware of the careful planning and subtle gestures that maintained the connection between the king, queen, and Camilla's family. Charles and Camilla had become experts in discretion, ensuring that every act of care remained hidden from prying eyes. Despite the tension, there were moments of lightness. Henry brought small gifts to the garden gate, simple offerings like fruits or flowers, leaving them where Charles and Camilla could find them. These gestures reminded the king and queen that love was a two-way path, flowing in both directions even under difficult circumstances. The couple began keeping a small journal, noting each gesture and meeting. It helped them plan carefully and avoid mistakes. Every entry reminded them of the joy they brought to each other and to Camilla's family. It also reinforced their determination to continue, despite the strict rules and growing scrutiny of the royal guard. As the days passed, the king and queen realized that love could survive even the harshest orders. Each secret meeting, each hidden gift, each careful letter strengthened the bonds between them and Camilla's family. It was a lesson in patience, creativity, and the power of care. Charles and Camilla knew that the royal guard's orders were unlikely to change quickly. Yet they also knew that by acting wisely, they could continue to nurture their family ties. The garden meetings, the hidden notes, and the subtle gestures had become a lifeline, a quiet rebellion that celebrated the enduring strength of love. And so, life in the palace continued with careful precision. Public duties were performed, official ceremonies observed, and the royal guard remained vigilant. Behind the scenes, however, the king and queen maintained their secret connections, proving that love could overcome the strictest rules. The bonds with Camilla's family were strong, resilient, and enduring, a source of hope and happiness even in the most challenging times. The palace had grown tense over the past few weeks. The royal guard's vigilance had increased, and King Charles felt the weight of their watchful eyes more heavily than ever. Camilla remained by his side, offering calm reassurance, but even she could feel the strain. Every movement, every plan, every gesture to keep her family close had to be precise and cautious. Despite the tension, Charles and Camilla refused to allow fear to take away their hope. They continued their small acts of care. Hidden letters, tiny gifts, and secret messages carried love and support to Camilla's family. These gestures were more important than ever, for they reminded everyone that family bonds could not be broken, even by strict rules. One morning, Charles met with Camilla in the palace gardens to discuss a new plan. "The guard is watching closely," he said quietly. "We need to change our routine. If they suspect everything could be lost," Camilla nodded. "We will make small adjustments. We must be clever, but we must continue. We cannot let her family feel abandoned." Together, they decided to introduce more subtlety in their gestures. Letters would be written in simple words, carefully folded and hidden in books that Camilla's family often read. Small bouquets of flowers would be left along paths they frequented, not at the gates. Simple gifts like baked bread or homemade preserves would be delivered at unexpected times, leaving no pattern for the guard to follow. Meanwhile, the royal guard had begun to notice small irregularities. Officers whispered among themselves, puzzled by the slight disruptions in the palace routine. Supplies seemed to move without explanation, and occasional glimpses of the king or queen in unusual places raised questions. Although no one had proof, suspicion grew quietly but steadily. Charles and Camilla were aware of this growing scrutiny. They had to act with even greater caution. Every visit to the garden, every delivery, every hidden note had to be carefully timed. They mapped their movements, planned routes through the palace, and coordinated with trusted servants who understood the importance of secrecy. Despite the careful planning, the pressure was beginning to take its toll. Charles often found himself staring out of the palace windows late at night, thinking of Camilla's family and wondering if their small gestures were enough. He feared that if the royal guard discovered the secret, not only would he be punished, but her family could also suffer consequences. Camilla, sensing his worry, placed her hand gently on his arm. "We are careful. We have planned wisely. Our love and loyalty will guide us, Charles. We will succeed if we remain cautious and united." The next gesture was carefully prepared. Charles selected a basket of fresh fruits, picked early in the morning while the palace was still quiet. Camilla added a handwritten note with warm words, folded neatly and placed inside the basket. The delivery was planned for late in the afternoon, when the royal guard's attention was focused elsewhere. Henry's mother discovered the basket with surprise and delight. She read the note carefully, recognizing the handwriting immediately. A smile spread across her face as she realized the king and queen had taken such care to send this small token of love. Even Henry, standing nearby, felt the warmth and reassurance of their attention. These small gestures became a source of comfort for everyone. Camilla's family felt remembered and cherished despite the strict orders of the royal guard. Charles and Camilla found encouragement in their smiles, knowing that even the simplest actions could have a profound impact. However, the royal guard's suspicion continued to grow. One evening, an officer noted the disappearance of the king and queen for a longer period than usual. He reported the observation to his superiors, who began to plan closer monitoring. Charles and Camilla understood that their secret might soon be discovered, and they had to prepare for every possibility. To reduce risk, they introduced even greater subtlety. Instead of leaving baskets or obvious items, they began using hidden paths in the garden and carefully chosen delivery points. Notes were written in plain language and folded to fit into small books. Flowers were placed in inconspicuous spots, and gifts were left where only Camilla's family could see them. Despite the increasing danger, the moments shared in the hidden garden were full of warmth and happiness. On a bright afternoon, Charles, Camilla, Henry, and his mother gathered quietly. They spoke softly, laughing at stories from the past, sharing hopes for the future, and enjoying the simple joy of being together, even for a short while. "These moments remind us why we must continue," Charles said softly. "Rules cannot erase the love we share." Camilla nodded. "Every gesture, every meeting keeps our family close. Even in the face of strict orders, love will find a way." Henry's mother smiled, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Your care and thoughtfulness mean everything to us. We feel your love even when we cannot see you openly." The couple knew that maintaining secrecy required more than planning. It required vigilance, patience, and trust. Trusted servants were essential allies, helping to ensure that every gesture remained hidden. Charles and Camilla relied on their guidance, knowing that careful coordination could prevent discovery by the royal guard. One evening, Charles stood on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The stars were bright and the cool breeze carried the fragrance of blooming flowers. Camilla joined him, placing a hand on his arm. "We are doing all we can," she said gently. "We have been cautious and our care will guide us safely." Charles nodded. "Yes, but we must be even more careful now. The guard's attention is growing and we cannot allow mistakes. Every move must be precise." They returned to the hidden garden that evening, meeting Henry and his mother for a brief but joyful gathering. The four of them shared stories, laughter, and memories of happier times. Even though they had to speak quietly and remain vigilant, the connection between them was strong. It reminded Charles and Camilla that love could overcome even the strictest rules. The royal guard continued its watch, unaware of the careful planning that allowed these secret meetings to occur. They believed their orders were being followed perfectly, while Charles and Camilla moved with quiet skill, balancing love and loyalty with caution and respect for tradition. Over time, the family became adept at this delicate balance. Small gifts, hidden notes, and quiet meetings provided reassurance and comfort. The bonds of love and trust grew stronger, proving that care and thoughtfulness could overcome even the most difficult challenges. Charles often reflected on the lessons he had learned during this time. Leadership required not only obedience to rules but also wisdom and compassion. Love, patience, and careful planning could protect what mattered most, even under scrutiny. Camilla remained his guide and partner, reminding him of the power of perseverance and careful thought. As days turned into weeks, the hidden gestures became more routine. Charles and Camilla discovered new ways to express love and maintain connection. Each note, each small gift, and each brief meeting strengthened their bond and gave hope to Camilla's family. They had created a hidden world where love could thrive, even under strict rules and watchful eyes. Despite the growing suspicion of the royal guard, Charles and Camilla's careful planning allowed them to continue their secret acts of care. Every meeting, every note, every hidden gift reminded them that love could survive and flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. Their courage, wisdom, and loyalty kept the family united, proving that the strongest bonds cannot be broken by rules alone, and so, the palace continued its outward appearance of order and tradition, while behind the scenes, Charles and Camilla nurtured the love and connection that sustained them and Camilla's family. Every day brought challenges, but it also brought hope, joy, and the reassurance that love could endure, even in the face of strict rules and close scrutiny. The palace felt different that morning. King Charles noticed the royal guard moving with unusual precision, their eyes sharper and more alert than ever before. He sensed that their patience was nearing its limit, and he knew that any misstep could reveal the secret connections he had maintained with Camilla's family. The tension was heavier than before, and even Camilla, always calm and reassuring, seemed more watchful. Charles spent the early hours reviewing their plans. Every gesture, every letter, every hidden gift had to be perfect. He could not afford mistakes. Camilla joined him quietly, standing close and offering her support. Her presence was comforting, reminding him that he was not facing this challenge alone. "We have been careful," she said softly. "We must continue, but we need to be more cautious. The guard's attention is growing, and we cannot let them find anything." Charles nodded. He knew she was right. For weeks, their secret gestures had brought comfort and hope to Camilla's family. Small letters, subtle gifts, and hidden notes had created a network of care that bypassed the strict rules of the royal guard. Yet the increasing vigilance of the officers made each act riskier. The next gesture was carefully planned. Charles selected a small basket of fresh fruits, chosen early in the morning while the palace was still quiet. Camilla added a handwritten note with words of love and encouragement. They planned to deliver it to the garden gate late in the afternoon, when the guard would be focused elsewhere. As they moved through the palace corridors, Charles could feel the eyes of the royal guard, even if they were not looking directly at him. He moved with quiet precision, careful to follow the paths they had practiced, avoiding areas where the officers might be watching. Camilla followed, her hand lightly brushing his, a reminder of their shared determination. Henry and his mother were waiting near the garden gate. When they saw the basket and note, their faces lit up with surprise and joy. Even in the shadow of strict rules, they felt the warmth and love from Charles and Camilla. They read the note carefully, recognizing the thoughtfulness and care in each word. "These gestures mean everything to us," Henry said softly. "Even though the rules keep us apart, we can feel your love. It gives us hope." Charles smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Love will always find a way," he said. "Rules cannot stop what is in our hearts." For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The family shared laughter, stories, and memories of happier times. The hidden garden, carefully chosen and well protected, became a sanctuary of joy and connection. It reminded Charles and Camilla that even in the strictest conditions, love and family could not be erased. However, the peace was temporary. A few minutes after they had begun to leave, the royal guard arrived at the edge of the garden, having noticed the unusual activity. Officers approached cautiously, their eyes filled with suspicion. Charles and Camilla froze for a moment, realizing that the secret might be discovered. The officer in charge stepped forward. "Your Majesties, we noticed movement near the garden," he said respectfully but firmly. "Can you explain?" Charles remained calm, taking a deep breath. He looked at Camilla, who nodded slightly. Together they approached the officer, their expressions composed. "We were walking through the gardens," Charles said softly. "We saw nothing unusual." "Everything is in order." The officer studied them carefully, clearly uncertain. He glanced around the garden, seeing the empty basket and the note still lying on the ground. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then slowly he stepped back and nodded. "Very well, Your Majesty," he said. "We trust your judgment. We will continue our watch." Charles felt a mixture of relief and triumph. The secret had not been fully discovered, and they had managed the situation with calm and wisdom. Camilla's hand pressed lightly against his arm, sharing in the quiet victory. That evening, Charles and Camilla returned to their chambers, reflecting on the events of the day. The risk had been great, but the outcome had strengthened their determination. They knew that careful planning, discretion, and love had allowed them to continue nurturing the connection with her family. "We have done well," Charles said quietly. "Even in the face of strict rules, we have maintained what matters most." Camilla smiled.
"Yes, and we will continue."
"Our family is strong and love cannot be stopped. Every small act of care, every gesture, every moment shared makes a difference." Over the following weeks, the pattern continued. Charles and Camilla found new ways to maintain their bond with her family, always careful to avoid detection. Notes were written with simple words, gifts were delivered with subtlety, and brief meetings in the hidden garden brought joy and reassurance. Each act reinforced the idea that love could survive even the strictest rules. Henry and his mother grew stronger too. The small gestures and secret meetings reminded them that they were valued and cherished. Even in the midst of separation, they felt the warmth and care from Charles and Camilla, which gave them hope and courage. The royal guard remained vigilant, but Charles and Camilla's careful planning allowed them to continue their secret acts. Their discretion and thoughtfulness ensured that the family's connection remained strong, even under scrutiny. One evening, as the sun set over the palace gardens, Charles and Camilla sat together, reflecting on the journey they had taken. The hidden meetings, subtle gestures, and careful planning had created a network of love that could not be broken. "We have learned much," Charles said softly. "Love is stronger than any rule. Care and thoughtfulness can overcome even the strictest orders." Camilla nodded. "Yes, and our family has grown stronger through this. Every act of kindness, every moment shared has made our bond unbreakable." Charles looked out over the gardens, seeing the beauty of the flowers and the soft glow of lanterns. It reminded him that even in difficult circumstances, there is always a way to nurture love, connection, and hope. The royal guard, though strict and watchful, had not succeeded in breaking the bond between the king, queen, and Camilla's family. Their careful planning and quiet acts of kindness had preserved what truly mattered. Love had triumphed over rules, and family had endured despite distance and obstacles. Charles and Camilla knew that the journey was not over. There would always be challenges, and rules would continue to test their resolve. Yet they also knew that with patience, wisdom, and unwavering care, they could continue to protect their family and nurture the bonds that held them together. In the quiet of the evening, Charles held Camilla's hand. "We have succeeded because we cared," he said softly. "Because we refused to let rules take away what is most important." Camilla smiled, her eyes reflecting warmth and love.
"Yes, and we will continue."
"Our family is strong, and nothing can break that. Love will always find a way." And so, life in the palace continued. Public duties and ceremonies were observed with grace, and the royal guard maintained their watch. Yet behind the scenes, a network of care, love, and connection thrived. Charles and Camilla had ensured that Camilla's family remained close, cherished, and remembered. The secret acts of kindness had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the enduring strength of love. The story of the king, the queen, and Camilla's family was one of hope and determination. Even in the face of strict rules and watchful eyes, they had found ways to nurture connection and preserve what mattered most. Through patience, careful planning, and unwavering love, they had shown that family and loyalty could overcome even the greatest obstacles. As the palace settled into the quiet of night, Charles and Camilla looked toward the future with hope. The bond with Camilla's family was secure, strengthened by careful attention and deep love. They knew that no rule, no order, and no distance could ever break the ties that bound them together. Love, patience, and care had triumphed, and their hearts were full of peace and joy.